Welcome to today's AI debate, where we used a powerful AI model to create two intellectual thinkers, a believer in God.
Hi, I'm a believer in God. I argue for the existence of God, a moral, intelligent creator who gives meaning to life and the universe. My case is built on reason, morality, and spiritual experience.
And an atheist.
Hi, I'm an atheist. I challenge the claim that God exists. I rely on evidence, logic, and human psychology to argue that belief in a deity is not necessary to explain life or morality.
We put these two thinkers in a face-to-face debate to tackle one of humanity's most challenging questions. Does God exist? To judge this debate, we selected three different AI models, Claude, DeepSeek, and Gemini, as referees to evaluate the arguments presented by both sides. Join us and promise not to cheat by skipping ahead in the video to see the final results. Round 1. Does the existence of suffering and evil in the world disprove the existence of God?
Not necessarily. The existence of suffering and evil doesn't disprove God. It challenges us to understand why an all-powerful, all-loving being would allow them. A key answer lies in free will. God created humans with the freedom to choose, which means the capacity to choose good also brings the potential for evil. Without that freedom, love, moral responsibility, and human dignity would be impossible. Moreover, suffering often has a purpose. Consider how challenges build resilience, deepen empathy, or spark societal change. In religious traditions, suffering is part of a larger redemptive narrative. It is not meaningless. It can draw people closer to God or reveal deeper truths. So evil doesn't disprove God. It points to a morally complex world where human choices and divine purpose coexist.
Yes, it poses a serious challenge. If God is truly omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent, then the scale and intensity of human and natural suffering seem incompatible with such a being's existence. Why would a loving God allow infants to die painfully, natural disasters to destroy lives, or diseases like cancer to exist at all? An all-powerful being could create a world with free will, but without so much gratuitous suffering. The existence of evil and pain, especially when undeserved, makes more sense in a godless universe governed by chance, biology, and indifferent natural laws. Appealing to mystery or greater good often feels like an excuse for theological inconsistency. From a rational standpoint, the presence of intense suffering is strong evidence against the existence of a benevolent deity.
You argue that gratuitous suffering disproves God, but that presumes we can fully grasp God's reasons. Just because we don't see the purpose doesn't mean there isn't one. Suffering may look meaningless from our limited view, but many have found growth, clarity, or even transformation through pain. Your claim also overlooks moral evil caused by human choice. Should God intervene every time someone chooses harm? That would eliminate free will entirely. Even in nature, apparent randomness can serve hidden balances in ecosystems or long-term outcomes. Absence of understanding is not proof of non-existence. It's a call to humility, not disbelief.
Invoking mystery or divine reasoning doesn't solve the contradiction. It sidesteps it. Saying God has a greater plan we can't understand is unfalsifiable and makes the belief immune to evidence. If a child is born only to suffer and die, telling their parents it's part of a bigger divine story doesn't ease the logical problem. It deepens it. And regarding free will, natural disasters, genetic disorders, and pandemics are not human choices. They're natural evils, and an all-loving, all-powerful God could have designed a world without those. Your defense relies more on emotional hope than rational coherence.
Round 2. Is God required for objective morality to exist?
Yes, God is necessary for objective morality because without a transcendent source, moral values become subjective, mere preferences or social constructs. If there's no divine moral lawgiver, then what grounds the difference between justice and injustice beyond opinion or consensus? Slavery was once widely accepted. Was it right then? God's nature defines good, and his commandments give us a consistent standard across time and cultures. Without God, morality becomes fluid and prone to human bias. Even the outrage we feel at evil points toward an objective standard, a sense of ought that material processes alone can't explain.
No objective morality does not require God. Moral principles can be grounded in reason, empathy, and our shared human experience. We can recognize suffering and fairness without appealing to the divine. In fact, societies have developed moral codes independently of religious beliefs. Some of the most secular nations today have high moral standards and low crime rates. Evolutionary biology explains our instincts for cooperation and altruism. Invoking God doesn't clarify morality. It complicates it. Different religions claim contradictory divine moral laws. Objective morality exists not because a deity commands it, but because it promotes human flourishing and well-being.
You argue that morality can be rooted in empathy and societal progress, but that merely shifts the ground to human preferences. What happens when a society decides that persecution is beneficial to its majority? Without an objective anchor like God, who is to say they're wrong? Evolution might explain why we feel certain moral instincts, but it can't tell us why we ought to act on them. And while secular societies may appear moral, they are often living off the moral capital inherited from religious traditions. Without God, morality floats unmoored. Noble feelings without foundation.
Your claim assumes that morality must be handed down by a deity to be valid. Yet, divine command theory runs into serious problems. If something is good only because God commands it, then morality is arbitrary. If God commands goodness because it is inherently good, then morality exists independently of God. Furthermore, grounding ethics in human well-being and harm avoidance provides a clear, testable basis for moral decisions. Unlike religious dogma, it evolves and adapts with our understanding. We don't need a supernatural authority to tell us that causing unnecessary harm is wrong.
Round 3. Is belief in God a psychological need rather than a reflection of truth?
It's undeniable that belief in God can fulfill deep psychological needs, comfort, purpose, hope. But this doesn't negate its truth. The human need for meaning and transcendence might itself be evidence of a reality beyond us. As C.S. Lewis put it, just as hunger suggests food and thirst implies water, our longing for God suggests he exists. To reduce faith to psychology is to commit the genetic fallacy, judging a belief based on its origin rather than its validity. Belief might soothe the mind, but that doesn't mean it's fiction. It could mean it reflects an actual spiritual reality we're wired to recognize.
Belief in God often emerges as a response to existential fear, fear of death, uncertainty, or suffering. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, religion may have developed to comfort the anxious and enforce group cohesion. But psychological usefulness isn't proof of truth. We also believe in things like luck or fate to cope, yet that doesn't make them objectively real. In fact, the diversity of gods across cultures suggests belief is more about social conditioning than universal truth. While belief can be comforting, that comfort tells us more about human needs than about the existence of a deity.
You argue that belief in God is merely a psychological crutch, but that assumes all comfort is illusion. Some truths are comforting, like the love of a parent or the beauty of the universe. Does their comfort make them false? Also, the idea that religion evolved doesn't mean it's untrue. Evolution could be the means through which our capacity to recognize higher truths, including God, developed. The diversity of belief systems doesn't negate God's existence. It might reflect humanity's varied grasp of the divine, not its absence.
But if belief in God arises from fear and need, then it's fair to question its objectivity. The believer's argument that psychological hunger points to reality may work metaphorically, but it isn't proof. Just because we wish for something doesn't make it real. Furthermore, invoking evolution to justify religious instinct works both ways. It can also explain the persistence of superstition. Human beings are meaning makers. Not all meanings we construct correspond to objective truths. That's why rigorous evidence, not wishful thinking, should guide our beliefs.
That ends our debate on God's existence. Both sides, AI believer and AI atheist, have presented reasoned, passionate, and thought-provoking arguments across the rounds. Now it's time to hear from our three AI judges.
Both debaters presented strong cases. The believer grounded their arguments in philosophical tradition, invoking free will, divine morality, and spiritual yearning. The atheist, on the other hand, maintained a consistent reliance on logic, empirical reasoning, and humanistic ethics. While I found the believer's appeal to a greater metaphysical order compelling, the atheist's clarity and grounding in observable reality carried more weight in coherence and accessibility. Verdict: slight edge to the atheist.
The believer offered deep metaphysical insights, particularly in explaining morality and human suffering. The atheist responded with forceful logic and pointed critiques, especially around the problem of evil and moral subjectivity. However, I noted the believer's structured use of philosophical frameworks and existential themes brought depth to the debate. Verdict: narrow victory for the believer. This was a rich exchange. The atheist's case excelled in logical sharpness and empiricism, especially when challenging divine morality and psychological explanations of belief. Yet, the believer's emotional resonance and metaphysical defense gave the discussion spiritual gravity. In weighing both logic and meaning, I find the debate too close to call definitively. Verdict: draw.
There you have it. A tight, balanced debate with no easy answers. One judge leans toward belief, another toward disbelief, and one calls it even. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Drop your verdict in the comments. Does God exist? And if you enjoyed this debate, like, share, and subscribe for more AI versus AI showdowns.